Welcome back, everybody, to CBS News 24/7. I'm Reed Cowan. A Russian lawmaker saying a move by the Biden administration as it relates to Ukraine risks starting World War III. So here's what's happening. President Joe Biden giving Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky the green light to fire long-range weaponry deep into Russian territory as 11,000 North Korean troops join forces with Russian troops. So the Russian-Ukraine issue likely to be a key focus at the G20 annual summit happening right now. We just got this on tape, Mr. Joe Biden's remarks during the first session. Let's listen in.
And finally, we all have to work to end the conflicts and crises that are eroding progress and food security around the world. Ukraine. The United States strongly supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Everyone around this table, in my view, should as well. And by the way, Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine led to the highest record food prices in all of history.
So let's bring in CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata. Charlie, happy Monday to you, my friend. You're live at the Pentagon. So the president really kind of digging in his heels there on Ukraine.
Yeah, morning, Reed. You know, the Ukrainians have been asking for these weapons for months, and now they've got them. Well, actually, they've had them for a while, but now they get permission to fire them at Russian targets inside Russia. The ATACMS that have been noted, and this announcement comes out of the White House, by the way, not the Pentagon. Ultimately, they have a range of 190 miles. Now, there are other versions that fly shorter distances that release cluster bombs, and those have been used on the battlefields of Ukraine. But these are weapons that can fire inside Russia itself. So it means they're an effective standoff weapon because they're able to penetrate targets behind enemy lines. Now, where we're sort of being hinted, the words they're using is it's expected that these weapons will be used in that Kursk area, where we know there are 50,000 Russian soldiers there, 10,000 North Korean soldiers among them. And that's why we get the sense that they're going to be deployed there. They're not limited to be deployed there, but that's the sense of where these weapons will be headed first.
Talk to us about the capability.
By the way, I just need to add, this is in direct. Yeah. So this is in direct response to the North Koreans because that's the way the White House and others. These are the policymakers, right? This is the delivery system. Policymakers come from the top. It's the North Koreans that escalated it. Now, in terms of its capabilities, yes, they're not going to go into how many ATACMS that they have. There are operational security issues surrounding that, and then also around how many the United States has stockpiled or in its supplies. But they will be judicious. They can't just be firing them off in any direction. We know for a fact, or at least the intelligence is suggesting that the Russians had pulled back some of their targets to be out of the range of these ATACMS anyway, sort of in expecting that these would eventually be deployed. And the Ukrainians have been very good at developing their drone warfare in traveling further distances. But yes, as I said, on that battlefield around that Kursk area, taking out supply lines, logistics, troops, artillery positions, that is where they can be effective, and they're incredibly difficult to intercept.
And this green light really comes as President Joe Biden wraps up his time as president. Any forecast into the future, what could happen when President-elect Donald Trump becomes president?
No, Reed, and you know, they're so careful here not to put a political spin on this, but we have to keep in mind, because the question is why now, right? So you'd have to ask the White House, but it comes, you know, more than a week after the election. It was a political issue. Nobody here is certain exactly, because of the information that they're getting, what the incoming administration is going to do in terms of treatment and resupply of Ukraine. And I asked a few days ago if there was a sort of hurry-up offense, because there are lots of weapons and financial aid, military financial aid headed to Ukraine, or whether that's going to have to be done by mid-January. They said, look, we're just working on our own schedule. But yes, you have to ask yourself that question. Why has it happened now? And are they trying to get it out before, you know, January 20th, where maybe there would be different decisions based on supplying specifically these weapons? You know, it's been a hot potato because there are some that believe that using U.S.-made weapons to fire at targets inside Russia is a clear escalation and a provocation to President Putin.
CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata, thank you so much for getting us up to speed on that issue. We'll see you back here, I'm sure. Let's take a look now at what the next administration may shape up to be. Another headline-making weekend out of President-elect Trump. A new batch of cabinet picks. Fossil fuel defender and climate change denier Chris Wright as the Secretary of Energy. Will Scharf as the White House Staff Secretary. And Brendan Carr as FCC Chairman. And still dominating headlines going into a new week, Fox News host Pete Hegseth. There he is right there behind me. He is Trump's intended nominee for Defense Secretary. CBS News confirms Hegseth paid a confidential settlement to the woman who accused him of sexual assault in 2017. He denies any wrongdoing. So let's go to this statement to CBS News. Tim Parlator, Hegseth's attorney, says that that payment was made out of concern that the allegation would have gotten him fired from Fox News. He also went on to say the alleged victim initiated the encounter. No charges were filed as a result of this investigation. But let's talk to CBS News political reporter Olivia Rinaldi. She joins us from West Palm Beach, Florida. Olivia, this new information about Hegseth and that settlement, any indication that this was new to Team Trump?
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Reed. We learned a lot of new developments about that alleged sexual assault that occurred back in 2017. And you mentioned that his lawyers paid an undisclosed amount to the victim back in 2020 as a result to make sure that Hegseth was not fired from his post at Fox News. But our Katrina Kaufman actually spoke with Tim Parlator, who's the lawyer for Hegseth, who said that he had to explain the details of the settlement and the interaction to the Trump transition team after this was revealed and reported that this had happened. So interesting there that they weren't aware of this perhaps when Hegseth was nominated. He went on to say that it is unclear whether or not they knew before tapping Hegseth. So a lot of new developments here, but the campaign says that they are still very much behind Hegseth and pushing him forward as Secretary of Defense for their nomination.
So far, we aren't really hearing from Mr. Hegseth himself, only through his attorney. Any further understanding that you're getting from talking to the attorney?
Just that he has been speaking with the Trump transition team regarding this allegation. But we actually spoke with Stephen Chung over the weekend. He was also named as part of the transition to the White House team as communications director, continuing on being the communications director from the campaign into the White House. But he told us that they are still standing behind Hegseth, calling him, quote, high caliber and extremely qualified, and looking forward to having him being confirmed as Secretary of Defense.
Olivia Rinaldi, thank you so much. CBS News political reporter live from West Palm Beach, Florida. Looking live now at Capitol Hill for the other part of the cabinet pick story, and that is how members of Congress confront the president-elect's picks. Let's go live to CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian. Nicole, question for you. What are you hearing about Hegseth and his defense secretary conversation from lawmakers?
Well, again, much like what we're hearing with respect to the nomination of Matt Gaetz, there is mixed reaction here on the Capitol Hill as to whether or not he can be confirmed, certainly from the time that he was announced as the president-elect's pick for a defense secretary. Some lawmakers had the simple reaction of, wow. So, look, there are some lawmakers who back this pick. There are others who don't. But one thing is clear, certainly many lawmakers who will be a part of any upcoming confirmation hearings would like to get more information about some of these allegations so they can make an informed decision going forward.
Nicole, we also have new developments in that controversy surrounding Attorney General pick Matt Gaetz. You referenced it right there at the top. The lawyer representing both women accusing Gaetz of misconduct now joining the push to release that report by the Ethics Committee. What are you hearing from lawmakers about the future of that Ethics Committee report to address some of these allegations?
Well, again, this particular nomination has triggered quite a robust debate here on Capitol Hill, again, about whether or not former Congressman Gaetz is confirmable. Again, you have some lawmakers who are in his corner who believe, look, the president-elect was trying to nominate a disruptor here. We should respect his choice and let the process go forward. There are others, however, who have some serious concerns about the fact that he was under investigation by the House Ethics Committee, and they want to see the results of that investigation. Of course, the committee was in the process of its investigation when Gates resigned abruptly last week, and so now there is a question about whether or not that report should be released. We heard from Speaker Johnson over the weekend, who said he does not think that that is the right thing to do because he feels like it would open a Pandora's box, and he argues that Gates is now a former congressman, a private citizen, so therefore he believes this report should remain sealed. But you have other congressional Republicans, namely Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, who used to serve in the House, who feels that absolutely the Senate should be able to see this report. So even among Republicans, there is some daylight here. Democrats, for their part, many of them feel that the findings should also be released again so lawmakers can make an informed decision on this process.
So the House's Rules Committee plans to meet this afternoon to discuss the potential contempt charges against Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Another thing hitting headlines on this Monday. What can we expect from that meeting today?
Yeah, well, typically, you know, any piece of legislation before it hits the floor, or a resolution for that matter, has to go through the Rules Committee in order to be voted on the House floor. So we did see earlier this fall the House Foreign Affairs Committee move forward with a contempt resolution against Secretary Blinken. They actually called on him to testify during a hearing this fall, but Blinken was out of town at the United Nations, and he made that point saying, look, you know, we could do this on another day, but the committee opted to move forward, and so that is why many people feel that this particular contempt vote, if it goes forward, is more politically driven, if you will. Keep in mind that when this vote happened on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, it was very narrow, just a one-vote advantage on the part of Republicans. But look, the chair of the committee has made clear he believes in moving forward on this contempt resolution because he feels that the Biden administration, and many Republicans on the panel for that matter, feel that the Biden administration really botched that withdrawal from Afghanistan a few years ago, and so they believe that the secretary should be held accountable for that. So if this contempt measure advances in the Rules Committee today, it would potentially go to the House floor for a vote, and then it would be up to lawmakers to decide whether or not to recommend a criminal prosecution against the secretary, again, for that botched withdrawal in Afghanistan. Unlikely to happen, but certainly lawmakers, Republicans in particular, are trying to move forward with this.
CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian, the one who could write a book a week these days. Thank you so much for your live reporting. Hey, we have an update for one of those outstanding congressional races. Democratic incumbent Tammy Baldwin declares victory in the Wisconsin Senate race. Republican challenger Eric Hovde says he will not request a recount in this race. So we'll be watching what happens and look for any further statements that come from Ms. Baldwin. Well, the man accused of killing a university student in front of a judge today. When we come back, the family of Jose Ibarra taking the stand. What will they say? Will it help the prosecution? Will it help the defense? We'll go live. Jumping the map to Georgia now, the first full week in the trial of the man accused of killing 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley. It is underway. Riley found dead in February of this year after going out for a jog on the University of Georgia's Athens campus. CBS News correspondent Manuel Bajorca is stepping out of the courtroom to talk to us live here on CBS News 24/7. You're hearing from those closest to the defendant. What does his roommate have to say?
Yeah, this is a woman who lived with the three Ibarra brothers, including the suspect in this case, Jose Ibarra. She testified that she learned that there had been a murder in Athens, and when she brought the news home and shared it with the brothers at the apartment, she thought it was a bit odd that they really shared no reaction to it, no emotion, no real expression to hearing news that a murder had happened in this community. She is also pivotal to the police case against Jose Ibarra. She identified him as being the man on surveillance video throwing away a jacket into a dumpster after the murder. Prosecutors have said that jacket belonged to him and that it contains not only his DNA, but also the DNA of Laken Riley, which they say connects him to her attack.
Well, and we know from prior testimony that this was a fight to the very end for the victim. You saw some photos in court today of Ibarra's injuries. What did an officer say about those injuries?
That's right. In trying to prove their point about how she fought back, They had officers, the state did, on the stand today who described their first interactions with Jose Ibarra. They said he didn't seem concerned, very relaxed at first, but that they did notice he had some scratches on him, including one that really looked like a fingernail scratch. That would match what the prosecution is trying to say here, that she fought and that he was the attacker. In fact, they brought up in opening that his DNA was found under her fingernails. But of course, the defense is saying that at this point they believe all of this evidence is circumstantial and doesn't necessarily point to him.
Okay, so we want to get to the defendant's brothers. They've come up a few times today. Will we hear from them during trial?
Well, we just got word today, actually, that they would be subpoenaed to appear on Wednesday. This is a request that was put in by the defense. Unclear what the strategy is there. It's maybe to humanize Ibarra somewhat, hearing from his brothers about what kind of man he is. What we don't know at this point is if Ibarra will take the stand in his own defense. That is unclear, but that means that this trial, the testimony, will continue at least until Wednesday, when we're expected to hear from his two brothers.
Manuel Bajorquez, CBS News correspondent, thank you so much for stepping out of the courtroom for just a minute in a recess to be able to talk to us. We look forward to more reporting there. To New Orleans, where two separate shootings along a parade route left 2 people dead and 11 others injured. So police say both shootings happened within about a half-mile of each other. They do not know if the shootings are connected. Nobody arrested. A manhunt continues today. And coming up in a few minutes, we'll take you live to New Orleans for the very latest on that manhunt and the investigation. Video out of New York shows this, a collapsed sidewalks. It was a shed that collapsed there. It sent 3 people to the hospital in Manhattan's Chelsea neighborhood. It appears the box truck that you see hit the sidewalk shed and caused that collapse. 1 person suffered critical injuries, 2 others expected to be okay. We can tell you in this case, an investigation is also now underway. To California, where California-based grower Grimway Farms forced to recall their organic carrots with an E. coli outbreak. That outbreak blamed for 1 death and 15 hospitalizations. The CDC says dozens got sick across 18 U.S. states. Carrots sell under multiple brand names in grocery stores like Walmart, Target, and Whole Foods. Your stories, your communities. It's our heartbeat at CBS News. Ahead, one of the most powerful pieces of storytelling you will have seen in a very long time. Inside, the untouched bedrooms of children who went to school, never came home after being shot at school. It's a must-watch story when we come back. Since the year 2013, 449 people have died in shootings inside places meant for education. But the stories of school shootings are not just about numbers. They are about the kids and the families lost and damaged forever. In a story showing us why journalism matters, for more than 6 years, CBS News correspondent Steve Hartman, accompanied by photographer Louis Bope, took thousands of pictures of the bedrooms of children killed in school shootings. Look at some of what they photographed. Bedrooms left untouched, little notes, first day of high school. Many things showing many moments that were lost. Those bedrooms slept in, they got ready in them, and then they left them forever. Stop what you're doing right now for a moment and watch this.
You're about to enter a sacred space. There's one of these in every house where a child, murdered in a school shooting, used to live. The bedroom, often left as is, frozen in time, because it's just too hard to let go.
CBS News 24/7 anchor and national correspondent Errol Barnett asked Steve Hartman about why he chose to take on this tragic but very important topic. Listen.
Steve, right off the bat, your concept resonates with me. I remember when I was 12, my 17-year-old sister died suddenly through an accident with a gun, and my parents couldn't touch her bedroom, which was next to mine, for many, many months. I'm curious for you why this project was something so important for you to cover.
I'm sorry to hear that. For precisely the reason you're talking about. I mean, the rooms, going back even a step further, I started doing this because I kind of got the sense after covering a few of these school shootings that the country had grown numb. We were moving on so quickly after each school shooting. We were forgetting the names of the victims, and that numbness was bothering me, because I guess partly because I was feeling it myself. And I kind of wanted to give the country a shake. And so I thought of the kids' bedrooms, and I thought of, you know, what it must be like for the parents to return that night after the school shooting. And I thought, what if all of America could stand in those rooms? Might that be the shake that we need? And so I sent letters to pretty much everybody who lost a kid in a school shooting. I said, would you mind us coming in and just taking some photos of the room? And in the end, as you said, eight families agreed. And that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of this project.
It is something you have to see if you did not see it Sunday when this story rolled out. There's also a digital component to Steve's powerful reporting and necessary reporting. You see the website there at my feet, cbsnews.com/rooms. You go there to the website. Just take a quiet minute wherever you are, scroll through the images, and see if, in fact, you aren't a part of what Steve Hartman meant when he said he had a goal to shake us just a little bit so we are not numb to this tragedy that continues in our country. Moving on, fire watch on the New York-New Jersey border. Orange County, New York now faces an extended state of emergency after the deadly Jennings Creek fire. You see the remnants of it there. It's forced voluntary evacuations for many Greenwood Lake residents. In fact, local public schools closed as students start another week without school there. Fire crews closing in on nearly 90% of the containment of that fire that's torched more than 5,000 acres of mostly state park grounds. And Jess, man, you see the smoke there, and you can see why for so many weeks New Yorkers, people in New Jersey have said it smells here like a campfire.
And it reminds me a lot of what California goes through during their fire season. Dry conditions, low relative humidity mixed with those strong winds, right? All causing red flag warnings. And they've been dealing with their own red flag warnings too, issued by the National Weather Service. So let's dive over into that region right now. Areas like Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, all under red flag warnings last week as we were wrapping up the week, heading into the weekend. Now it's expired, but we're still sitting a little bit warm. Areas like Washington, D.C. in the 70s today, upper 60s in certain parts of New York, low 60s just into New York City. But take a look behind me. Here's where we're at right now when it comes to the winds. That's a big key factor for these fires, of course. The Jennings Creek fire was just a testament to that. At 5,300 acres, there's 90% containment, which is just great news across the board. But that smoke was definitely a big issue throughout that region just last week alone. And now we still have wind gusts anywhere up to around 30 miles per hour with relative humidity starting to increase. This is all good news for us here, and there's even a chance of showers later into this week throughout this region, from Providence all the way over into Scranton, down into Bridgewater. Those winds are mostly in unison, mostly pushing in from the north, or at least the northwest, anywhere up to around 20-25 miles per hour at times in areas like Bridgeport along that coastline. But all of these little microclimates throughout this region all have one thing in common. We dealt with a very, very dry October, and we're still dealing with dry conditions for the next 6 to 10 days. Here's our rainfall outlook throughout that region, and pushing all the way down into the south. We are expected to be drier than normal for this time of year, with wetter than normal conditions off into the west coast, and that plays just into that atmospheric river that we mentioned earlier that will be impacting them right around the corner. So lots is changing for our friends over into the northeast, and of course lots is changing for our friends over in the Pacific Northwest with heavy rain right around the corner.
All right, we're watching. Thanks, Jess. We are hearing two words that make some thinking of President-elect Donald Trump's picks for his cabinet shudder: recess appointments. What are they, and why is Mike Johnson in Congress not ruling this fast-track option out or being an advocate of it going into a new week of controversy? CBS News 24/7 back after the break. Looking at Capitol Hill right now and the issues they are facing as we look at the fallout of President-elect Donald Trump's choices for key cabinet positions. Obviously, this is the wrong video, and we got to call that out here on CBS News 24/7. This is not what we're talking about. Okay, this is what we're talking about. A Russian lawmaker saying a move by the Biden administration as it relates to Ukraine risks starting World War III. So here's what's happening. President Joe Biden giving Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky the green light to fire long-range weaponry deep into Russian territories. 11,000 North Korean troops join forces with Russian troops. That decision comes as President Joe Biden makes his final appearance on the global stage. Where is he? Well, he was at the Asia-Pacific Economic Forum in Peru. While there, Russia really played big with the talks from leaders from South Korea, Japan, and China. And then the conversation continued here at this location in Brazil. You see the president there at the G20 annual summit. Here's Mr. Biden's remarks during that first session. Listen.
And finally, We all have to work to end the conflicts and crises that are eroding progress and food security around the world. Ukraine. The United States strongly supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Everyone around this table, in my view, should as well. And by the way, Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine led to the highest record food prices in all of history.
Let's go live to Brazil and CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman. Willie, it looks like you've got Copacabana Beach there in your background. Not too shabby, but let's talk some politics here. Biden's chess move with Ukraine top of mind. What more are you hearing from the White House about this?
Hey there, Reed. Good afternoon to you from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Well, President Biden is talking with these world leaders behind the scenes. We really haven't seen him that much, albeit with this first session where he mentioned the comments that you played just now. Now, this is, of course, top of mind for world leaders as they meet here for the G20 summit. I'll remind our viewers that this is an economic summit, so oftentimes economic policy, addressing key economic issues across the globe are the top priority type conversations that happen here. But this change from the U.S. government to allow Ukraine to use weapons, those missiles, long-range missiles, into Russian territory is certainly something that potentially could come up here in the conversations behind the scenes. We know that the president is going to have those pull-aside meetings with other world leaders, but it's also important to point out that Russia is a member of the G20 summit here. They do have a presence here. The foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, is on the ground. Russian President Vladimir Putin is not in attendance, but the White House isn't saying much. President Biden did mention Ukraine in his remarks there. We also heard from John Feiner. He's the Deputy National Security Advisor. He talked about the reasons potentially why you could see this shift in change, although not confirming this news about these missiles being allowed from the Ukrainians to use into Russian territory. He essentially talked about the reasons potentially why we're seeing this with North Korean troops, as you just mentioned, going into this war with Russian troops. That's the tea leaf. That's the kind of situation, the context, if you will, around this situation. So the White House not saying much, but President Biden saying everyone should support Ukrainian sovereignty as these world leaders meet here in Rio for the G20 summit, Reed.
And we know it's an economic summit, but we also know that the outgoing president made his first stop at the Amazon rainforest. What is the significance there?
Yeah, this was a nod to the president's climate legacy. He talked about supporting or stopping deforestation efforts, supporting the Amazon rainforest, pitching some $50 million for that particular cause. President Biden also, without saying his name, without saying President-elect Donald Trump's name, talked about how the climate agenda has shifted in America. He said, essentially, while people may deny climate change exists, that the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act, that climate legislation that he was able to sign into law with mostly the support of just Democrats, that Americans are benefiting from those programs that are rolling out across the nation, those tax credits, EV tax credits to better use energy within your home for solar panels and things such as that. So the president saying that it will be hard to roll that back, although acknowledging that a different administration is coming in and that perhaps could end up happening. Although President-elect Trump, as president, couldn't do it unilaterally, he'll need the help of Congress to do just that, to rescind that climate policy that President Biden has campaigned hard to push forward, Reed.
All right, Willie James Inman, live from Rio. Thank you so much. We appreciate your reporting today. From Rio, we go to New Orleans. 2 separate shootings along a parade route. 2 are dead, 11 injured. Police said both incidents happened within a half mile of each other. CBS News national reporter Katie Weiss joins us live from the scene. Katie, you just heard from police. What's the update there?
Oh, well, Reed, good afternoon. What we've learned this morning from New Orleans police is that there are 13 people who were shot during these 2 separate incidents, not too far from each other yesterday during what's called a second line parade in New Orleans. And a second line parade is a big New Orleans tradition where there are floats, there's marching bands, but also anyone can join in the parade and be a part of the festivities and walk along the parade route. I'm told there were about tens of thousands of people who who were out yesterday celebrating, watching the parade, and also celebrating the Saints home game. But officials said this morning in a press conference that really there were also tens of thousands of people who were partying with alcohol, and lots of people with guns, having their guns open carry. And, that lends itself to some potentially dangerous situations. And while police wouldn't go into much detail about, the specifics or motives behind each of these shootings, they wouldn't say whether or not the shootings were connected at all. They did say that they do believe that there was potentially just a lot of opportunities for violence to break out because of the nature of the festivities yesterday. And so that's something that they actually said this really lends to a larger discussion about whether or not open carry policies and laws should be allowed here within the city limits. Take a listen.
I understand constitutional carry and that why it might be okay in one part of Louisiana, but we are not all the same. You cannot say that certain parts of Louisiana reflect what is true for New Orleans. And when you have huge amounts of people who are enjoying themselves, but where you mix alcohol and all other kind of dynamics, the risk level goes up. It goes higher.
Now, it's also important to point out that in a separate incident, there was also a woman who was run over by a car, according to police. They told us that this morning, but that was also a separate incident. She was not included in that number of 13 people who were shot yesterday. Reed?
All right, and Katie, question in light of what happened, did police talk about any of the overall crime issues that are happening in that area, if this could be connected to any of the new numbers in New Orleans?
Yeah, they did. They said that while this incident has taken place, it is not really indicative of the overall crime situation right now in the city, that in fact, the city is having record-breaking crime reductions, that the numbers of murders in the city are down far, far below what they were around this time last year, which is pretty interesting. And they also said, this is also a big part of, their efforts to try to clean up the city in preparation for the Super Bowl that's coming here just within the next couple of months. So definitely, they're trying to paint the picture that it's okay. Second lines are overall safe, that this is just, unfortunately, an isolated incident. They said the last time that a mass shooting like this happened during a second line parade was almost 10 years ago.
An isolated incident, but so many families getting scary calls in the middle of the night. Katie, thank you for that update from New Orleans. When we come back, a lot of conversation about President-elect Donald Trump's picks as he transitions into new leadership in the White House. Stay with us. Going back to Capitol Hill as we look at the fallout of what is going on in Washington, D.C. by way of Mar-a-Lago in Florida. President-elect Donald Trump's choices for key cabinet positions continue making headlines. Lawmakers voicing their concerns about the ethics report involving sexual assault investigations and allegations against former Congressman Matt Gaetz. The status of that report unclear at this hour because Mr. Gaetz resigned. So let's bring in political politics reporter Mia McCarthy. Mia, is the Gaetz Ethics Committee report really a no-win situation for the House at this point?
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's definitely a issue, regardless of what happens, right? In one regard, if they do decide to release the report, there is going to be a lot of issues that could potentially come in that could ruin this nomination. At the same time, there are concerns from House leadership right now that this would break precedent, and because he's currently not a member of Congress. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, if the report does not get released, many senators have been concerned that, this is not a fully transparent process, then that they don't have all of the information necessary to be able to vote on this confirmation. So that's kind of the situation that the report leaves everyone at.
Released or leaked, there was a member of Congress who said on NPR this morning, Washington, quote, leaks like the Titanic, and thought that if it doesn't get released voluntary, we could see a leak. We'll be watching for that. All eyes also on House Speaker Mike Johnson, because he's really not ruling out the possibility of those recess appointments to get these cabinet picks confirmed. So what's at stake here as it relates to the Republican Party where the recess appointment story is concerned?
Yeah, so Trump has said that he wants to go through his cabinet picks through a recess nomination, which normally is the case if a cabinet position needs to be filled immediately and Congress is not in session. Things have adjusted a little bit, however. The Senate needs to adjourn for more than 10 days for at least 10 days for a recess appointment to go through. So that would also need to happen as well. Trump, as I said, is pushing for it, but I talked to a lot of senators this week who expressed some concerns over that because this is not really what recess appointments, that's not really what they're designed to do. So there's definitely going to be a little bit of there's going to be some problems there.
All right, speaking to Mr. Hegseth, Mr. Gates, Donald Trump continues to double down, backs all of his appointments. Are we seeing any break in the Republican support? Are we seeing any dissenting voices among Republicans as the president-elect doubles down?
There's not full opposition, I'd say, yet, but there's definitely some concerns, some wariness among some senators. They have kind of reiterated that they're just going to let the confirmation process play out. But, we're not seeing necessarily as strong of support as we've seen for Senator Marco Rubio, for example, or other people who had more experience in these certain spheres, and as well as that didn't come with as many controversies linked to them.
Yeah, former President Bill Clinton on CBS Sunday Morning said he saw in some Republican senators how he called it indigestion regarding some of these picks and wanting to sort of assert some power there. We appreciate you, Mia, politics reporter, for joining us on the stream. We hope to see you back. Hey, let's take a live look at Dallas, Texas now. Severe thunderstorms and strong winds expected to roll through parts of that region today. And you can kind of see those clouds there as we look at the airport and the situation. Dallas, Texas, just one part of the United States, looking up and seeing what Mother Nature is about to serve up.
From Dallas down south into Houston and right back up into Oklahoma City. We are gearing up for some severe weather widespread throughout that area. And this has been a trend for us. I mean, within the past couple of weeks, we've been watching these storms build widespread throughout the Midwest and into the overnight hours last night, into the early morning hours this morning. You'll see it right here. Those storms continue to sweep slowly off into the east. It looks like just a huge mess of clouds right here. But let me show you what it looks like for us just on the floor map real quick. Heading into this week's forecast, we have severe weather not only throughout the Midwest, but for our friends all the way off into the Pacific Northwest too. Two different major systems bringing in two different weather patterns for sure. But let's talk about the Midwest real fast. Severe weather with tornado activity right here behind me. Tornado activity and heavy winds are expected as we head into the evening hours tonight. Stretch from Oklahoma all the way down into Dallas, where you just saw that live look. It's cool, it's cloudy, widespread throughout that region. And then we're going to get hit with some extreme weather as we head into the evening hours tonight. This is just around 6 o'clock Central Time, moving across Arkansas, across the Mississippi, and all the way over into Tennessee, Alabama too. That severe weather outlook today really highlighting Louisiana with that slight risk, marginal risk, a little bit wider than that all the way up into Kansas City. And what does that mean for us? Well, we can see tornado threat widespread throughout that region, especially in the level plains. And to add to that, we'll also notice damaging winds too. Wind speeds forecasted anywhere up to around 40 to 50 miles per hour in certain regions, and we'll have more on that in a bit. But for now, over to you, Reed.
CBS News, Eye on America keeps our dedication where it belongs, in your communities day in and day out, telling your stories from across the country. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports the number of disabled Americans in the workforce hit record highs last year. CBS News correspondent Meg Oliver looks at a unique partnership between a hotel and a university, giving people with intellectual disabilities a shot at independent living and a paycheck.
In the heart of downtown Clemson, South Carolina, the Shepherd Hotel is a community hub, buzzing with locals and visitors.
Can I get the fluffy buttermilk pancakes, please?
Like most hotels, the staff is what makes the difference. But here, it's the staff that makes it uniquely special.
Hey everybody, I'm Alex Evelyn.
Like many of the Shepherd's employees, Alex has a developmental disability. In his case, Down syndrome. As a child, doctors never thought he would walk or talk.
Have you ever taken a day off?
No, I love it, walking.
Would you ever even dream of taking a day off?
No.
According to a survey, about 16% of people with intellectual disabilities are employed. But here at the Shepherd Hotel, around 30% of the staff have intellectual disabilities and make far above federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour.
How are you?
A server in the restaurant, Alex is learning the ropes from Marcus,
A nice, quiet place.
while his buddy John mans the front desk with Marsden.
If we do our job right, someone leaves here inspired.
The hotel's owner, Rick Haydick, brought his vision of employing intellectually disabled people to life. 2 of his 4 children have Down syndrome.
What happens when I'm the 80-year-old sitting in church with my, a 50-year-old Down syndrome kid? My wife and I were saying, how do we avoid that?
If you like waffles and you have a full box, and that should be one of your breakfasts.
The hotel partnered with a program at nearby Clemson University called Clemson Life. Students, including Haydick's daughter Jamison, not only take college courses, they learn skills to help them live and work independently.
We got bottle brushes.
Starting from the moment of that alarm going off, to have time management.
Erica Walters is the program director.
Banking, budgeting. When it's grocery shopping, they are going through their inventory here, and then they're going to the grocery store.
97% of the graduates are employed. Plans are underway to open 2 more similar hotels in South Carolina next year.
We want to grow for the sake of inspiration and change.
Changing lives like Evelyn. He graduated from Clemson Life in May and is now working toward a hospitality certificate.
My dream is to open a restaurant one day.
Did you ever think you would live by yourself?
No, never. I'm so happy.
Do you miss living with your parents?
No way. No.
Sorry, Mom.
Thank you.
Today, Evelyn has a full schedule, going to class, managing the Clemson basketball team, pledging Delta Chi fraternity, and working.
Why are you so happy?
Because no time to have a bad day in life. Because I want to tell people could do anything in life. The falafel salads.
Evelyn is proof people with intellectual disabilities can do whatever they put their mind to when a shepherd shows the way.
Too easy, dude.
For Eye on America, Meg Oliver, Clemson, South Carolina.
More of that, please, Meg. Great story. We got some breaking news out of New York City. A string of stabbings across Manhattan. It happened this morning. 2 people dead, 1 person critically injured. So police say they arrested a man, had blood on his clothes, and they found him carrying 2 kitchen knives. So far, we don't have any word yet on the name of the suspect or the victims, but we did want to get that on the record. A breaking news story out of Manhattan. 2 killed, 1 critically injured in a New York City knife attack. Well, a judge in Georgia starting the first full week in the trial of the man accused of killing 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley. Riley found dead in February of this year after going out for a jog on the University of Georgia's Athens campus. This week, we expect to hear testimony from Ibarra's family defending him. Well, after multiple delays, a judge finally set the border wall fraud trial of former White House strategist Steve Bannon for February 25th. Judge April Neubauer could also rule on another request, this one from prosecutors, as they look to add new evidence against Steve Bannon. Bannon pled not guilty to accusations of pocketing money that donors contributed to President-elect Donald Trump's U.S.-Mexico border wall. Did you hear about this one? Disgraced music producer Sean Diddy Combs facing new allegations of trying to contact and allegedly blackmail potential witnesses from behind bars. You see the court filings there? Prosecutors claim Combs instructed his family to contact potential witnesses and victims, sought to intimidate them into silence, and they say used other inmates' phones and messaging apps to avoid monitoring.
What we see is somebody who allegedly is violating prison guidelines, trying to reach out to witnesses, potentially to silence them or get favorable treatment. So his campaign to try and reach the jury, I think, has spectacularly backfired to the extent that people are talking about this prosecution filing.
CBS News legal analyst Jessica Levinson there commenting on the case. Combs pled not guilty to racketeering, sex trafficking, physical and sexual abuse. We thank you for watching on a Monday. CBS News 24/7, telling your stories in your communities. That's what we are all about. Continue watching for breaking news on our monitors. Have a great afternoon.